sitting on this platform and talking about electronics over the last, let's say, 10 months. And we have, I think, succeeded in systematically building a framework and a strategy that has clearly outlined our goals of a $300 billion electronics manufacturing ecosystem with $120 billion of exports by the year 2026. As I think somebody mentioned, it was either Deepak or Pankaj, that electronics in India has traveled a long way since 2014. In 2014, this was a moribund industry, racked by and in a sense ravaged by FTAs and a reasonably senseless import policy, leaving us extremely vulnerable to imports and dependence on imports on the fastest growing segment of the domestic economy after hydrocarbons and petroleum, which is electronics. So we were in 2014 a country that was increasingly dependent not just on petroleum imports but also on the electronics imports. And systematically, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji over the years has built back an electronics sector. And today we are, as a consequence of the number of policies that Mr. Marwa talked about, we are a $75 billion, $76 billion if you count the last billion, $76 billion manufacturing economy with $16 billion of exports with a target of $21 to $25 billion of exports in the next year. But most importantly, by 26, we have clearly laid out a goal of $300 billion of manufacturing with $120 billion of exports. That strategy, apart from just the numbers, and some of you may have seen this, some of you may have read these 2 volumes of documents, talks about the broadening and deepening of the electronics sector. So we have obviously been very successful in the mobile and cellular sector, but we want to broaden the product categories and also deepen the ecosystem of components and other inputs that go into electronics. So the broadening and deepening is what will take us to this $300 billion and $120 billion. So I think this report by ICRIER, and I have written out a forward for those who are interested in understanding my detailed granular views on this report. There's a forward of mine in the report. But I will explain to you how I see this report. It is an interesting, it is a very important and very interesting element that describes, in some sense, what our strategy will be for the next few years. That electronics is about scale. You know, China does $900 billion of exports. The global value chain for electronics is about $1.5 trillion. It is clear that this is a business of volumes, this is a business of scale, and our electronics ecosystem has to reach the scale, and hence we have that number of $300 billion and $120 billion. The second important element here is that the value chains of electronics around the world post-COVID are undergoing deep tectonic, irreversible changes. That presents to India and the current momentum and opportunity, which is explained by the $120 billion export target that we have for 2026. That opportunity is an opportunity that will be fiercely contested. There will be other geographies and countries that will contest that opportunity. But that opportunity is an opportunity that we believe, and we have clearly sees this, and when I say we, it is we and the government and the industry working together. We see this as an opportunity for the next 2 or 3 years as the value chains start continue the shift and complete the shift and the redesign and re-architecture. This report, in a nutshell, leaves us with this view, which is that the opportunity is real. The numbers that we have set out in the Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Vision are doable and deliverable, and we can and we must reach them. But that the postulation in this report is that we must export aggressively to reach the scales, in addition to domestic production and domestic supplies and domestic consumption, that exports are a very important way to get the scales of the other economies that are competing with us. That is the first take take out of this, and that exports will create an almost a network effect or a knockdown effect of creating the supply chains interest, the supply chain investments, that in turn will increase value addition in the Indian electronics segment. So while Deepak being an economist will use a lot of log graphs, and that is obviously that's what economists do, and I have no grudge against that. But I just wanted to distill it down into in plain English for those who are interested in understanding what this tells us about.
We have invited you on this occasion of the release of this very important report, and we have with us the Honorable Minister of State for Electronics, IT and Entrepreneurship and Skill Development, Rajeev Chandrasekhar. I extend you a very warm welcome on behalf of the IB, sir. We also have representatives of ICA and ICRIA, and also the scientists from METI with us. Now we have seen the report which has been released, and there has been a detailed presentation. The floor is now open for the question and answer, and whatever doubts you have, Honorable Minister.
Tells us about our strategy, that I think in a lot of ways it validates what the government of India is trying to do, which is to really encourage and grow exports, given the fact that this market opportunity, supply chain opportunity of change exists. And that in turn will create the supply chain investments that we see from our domestic players, the growth of our domestic players, and other overseas investments into supply chain that will in effect the value addition increase that we seek for any activity that is the legitimate outcome that we seek. Mr. Marwa talked about the semiconductor policy. I think semiconductor is the icing on the cake, because when we talk about value addition, we talk about scale, an electronics industry of scale, an electronics industry that is headed in the direction of significant value addition domestically because of the scale, also lends itself well in terms of creating a very viable and robust semiconductor ecosystem that in turn feeds the electronics industry. So I will leave it at that. I again thank you, ICA. I thank ICRIA. ICA has been a good, solid partner in the government's own ability to intellectually plan this, think this through. It is a very important thing. Reports sometimes are discounted in Delhi because they are pieces of paper that people seldom read. But these reports have played a seminal role in creating an all-of-government awareness to the opportunity that the electronics manufacturing, the global GVC changes represent, and also create an all-of-government awareness of what policy actions are required to make India's ambitions successful. So I will leave it at that. Thank you very much again. And my statements, I think these are legitimate findings by ICRIA. It's a study, not somebody's intuition or somebody's gut feel. So we will look. Our ambitions, our goals are very clear, and if this document, in my opinion, is a legitimate input into that strategy. The strategy needs us to look at scale versus value addition as a real discussion. We will look at it. It is clear in our mind that these are correlated issues. That value addition or margins, as in some other language, is an issue that is important, because value addition tells you about how much value you are adding in a country. If it is just simply no value addition, there's no point. There is no economic activity arising out of it. So we are interested in, our ambitions are significant value addition to whatever we do in the digital space in this country, in our country. But ICRIA has pointed out that there is a way to that needs to be navigated through maybe lower margins or lower value addition in the early stages while the supply chain builds up. And it's something that we'll look at, we'll examine.